After awakening from his haze in the time-exiled workshop, Cessair began to gather his thoughts. Much remained to be done. Scrambling once again through his ancient tome, past pages of dark incantations and painted men, he settled his fingers upon the page he sought, the altar. He did not yet have what he needed to pull such a powerful object back through the curtain of time. Such an act required many sacrifices, and once more leading his druids to the sacrificial circle, he set his sights on restoring yet another part of this ancient ground. 2 bodies lashed across the sacrificial circle proved enough this time. 2 druids remained, possessed by sorcery, barely reacting as the ground shuddered once more. Welcome back to Season 3 of Settlers. This is Episode 3 and we'll be building the Prison, another structure pulled from time to contain prisoners in Cinis. There are a couple of mods used in the decoration, but none in the construction. The requirements are on screen now, and though the build will look complicated, the construction process is quite simple. So without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, I began with, of course, the base plate. I set it up using storm glass ceilings and walls as shown in the blueprint a moment ago, and I also dropped the central section down by 1 notch, though you can leave it flat if you prefer. I've also got corner pillars running up the 4 main corners for framing. Next, I began by offsetting 2 tiles to create the entrance. I used the pillar trick to get a ceiling off-centre, and then I moved that snap point over to create a 2x1 section onto which I could place the entrance. Next, for the walls. I built the walls 3 tiles high around the perimeter, leaving a gap at the entrance and including 1 storm glass window per wall. I also built the pillars up to match the height of the walls. Once I'd finished those walls, I used ceilings, walls and pillars to build out the staircase section at the entrance of the build. Once the staircase was finished, I also then added a Stormglass 2x2 door from the Stormglass Cathedral set to create the entrance, and this offset doorway actually fits perfectly into the gap between the walls. Once I'd finished the entrance and built up the buttresses, I moved on to the first floor. I firstly covered the top of the walls with Stormglass vaulted ceilings, and then used walls to build up the first floor 1 tile high. Next, I added in a roof gable onto the front entrance and sloping sides onto the buttresses. I had to use stable pillars to temporarily replace the Stormglass pillars to be able to get these sloping sides to clip properly. Back to the first floor, I increased the height of the walls by another tile and then used walls and sloping sides to create small open gables on either side of the first floor roof. I then increased the height of the central 3x3 once more and added a small Stormglass window. Next, for the roofing. I kept things fairly simple, following the flow of the gables I'd created to make fairly straightforward roofs over the entrance, main body and the buttresses. The main body roof does look a little complicated, but with some smart use of corners and inverted corners, it's actually quite simple. The roof atop the first floor is also a simple open gable to keep things, well, simple. Finally, I went back inside and added a bit of structure. I used ceilings to separate 2 layers inside, and used walls in the back corners to buff out the dead space and make the interior feel a little more dense. As the earth shuddered, Cessair left his druids behind, making his way to the prison. It was a curious place with a design that didn't seem to suit. Perhaps it had not always been a prison, he thought. As he entered, he was certain he heard a scream fade into echoes. The prison, restored from some strange place in the distant past, had undoubtedly borne many screams. The walls lined with steel cages, lined up tightly like storage containers, this prison was truly horrific. Cessair would happily fill those cages over and over when the time was right. Glancing down at his book again, his mind was cast back to when he discovered it, in a cave deep within a ruined empire. He had grown weary in his search for knowledge and took rest in the cavern, yet when awakening from his sleep, he found the book resting on his chest. It seemed to have come from the very shadows of the world, and perhaps when he crossed the veil, the book would return to shadows once more. Cessair took one last glance across the prison before making haste back to the workshop. Beginning to carefully mix reagents together, he planned out his next steps with caution. The prison needed filling. Unfortunately, there were many souls nearby to fill it.